The Velnikari Empire had swallowed 47 star systems in 4 centuries. Planets fell not with a fight but with a silence, the silence of civilizations that looked up, understood the math, and surrendered before the first volley was ever fired. Emperor Kale Veyron preferred it that way. War was noise. Subjugation was music. He sat upon the obsidian throne aboard the Eternal Dominion, a vessel 3 times the length of Earth's moon, its hull black as collapsed starlight. Around it, 700 warships held formation, a constellation of annihilation. His 3 eyes, each a different shade of violet, studied the blue-white marble rotating slowly on the holographic display before him. "Earth," said High Advisor Salveth, his voice carrying the practiced reverence of one who had survived 3 emperors. Population, 8 billion. Technology, pre-warp, though accelerating. They call themselves humans. Emperor Veyron studied the planet. Small. Wet. Loud, their radio transmissions had been bleeding into space for over a century, disorganized and chaotic, 1,000 languages shouting at once. He had read the intelligence files. These creatures had never once, in their entire recorded history, achieved lasting peace among themselves. They were fractured. Tribal. Perpetually at war with one another over invisible lines they drew in their own soil. A species that could not unite against itself would never unite against him. "They have been given the standard offer," he asked. 3 times, your radiance. Surrender. Submit to imperial governance. Yield your planetary resources and 40% of your biological population for labor redistribution. Salveth's secondary fingers folded together. They replied each time. Veyron raised an orbital eye ridge. And? Salveth cleared his throat, an unusually organic gesture for a being of his stature. "The first time," their governing council said, and I translate conservatively, "no." The second time, a collection of their military officers responded with a phrase our linguists required 6 hours to fully contextualize. The third communication came from one Admiral Ethan Cross, who appears to command their planetary defense forces. What did he say? Another pause. He said, "Come and take it." Veyron was quiet for a long moment. Then he rose from the obsidian throne, a gesture so rare that every officer on the bridge held their breath. "Open a galactic band transmission," he said, his voice dropping to the register he reserved for history. "Every frequency. Every world under Imperial control. Every vessel in the fleet." He straightened to his full 7-foot height. "Let the universe watch us teach these creatures what defiance costs. People of Earth. Your refusal is noted and your arrogance is forgiven, for the ignorant cannot be held responsible for what they do not yet understand. I, Emperor Kale Veyron, Lord of the Velnikari, subjugator of the 47, now issue the final command: your world will burn in 48 of your hours. Any vessel that attempts to flee will be destroyed. Any signal sent will be silenced. There is no help coming. There is no negotiation. There is only the lesson. EKV. Part 2, The Admiral. Admiral Ethan Cross received the transmission at 0340 hours GMT, in the underground command center beneath the Azores, a facility so classified it had no official name, only a number. He listened to the full broadcast without moving. Around him, 43 officers from 29 nations stood at their stations, silent, watching their commander's face for a signal about how to feel. Cross was 54 years old. His hair had gone gray in his 30s. He had the kind of face that had been weathered not by age but by decisions, by the specific weight of choices that could not be undone. He had spent the last 6 years unifying humanity's fragmented militaries into the Earth Defense Coalition, a task that had required more diplomacy than any war he had ever fought. When the transmission ended, he turned to Captain Joe Meny, his tactical officer, a razor-sharp Korean-French strategist who had once calculated a firing solution in her head during a power outage. "Joe," he said, "how long has the package been ready?" Captain Joe Many did not look up from her console. 31 months, 14 days, Admiral. And the relay network? Every satellite. Every undersea cable. Every emergency broadcast tower on the planet. And she finally looked up, something rare and electric in her expression, the signal amplifiers we buried in the asteroid belt last year. They'll carry us another 2 light years in every direction. Cross nodded slowly. He moved to the center console and placed his palm on the authentication pad. A sequence of lights confirmed his identity across 4 redundant systems. Then it's time, he said. Execute Protocol de Hiwa. Part 3, Every Screen. It happened at exactly 0400 hours GMT. Every screen on Earth lit up simultaneously. Not just phones. Not just televisions. Every display, hospital monitors, traffic control boards, the scrolling tickers in stock exchanges, the ancient CRT in a repair shop in Lagos that hadn't been turned on in years, the digital billboard in Times Square, the screens aboard the ISS, the screens in Antarctica research stations powered by nothing but wind turbines, every single one went dark for exactly 2 seconds, and then displayed the same thing. Aboard the Eternal Dominion, Solveth was first to notice the anomaly. Your radiance, we're picking up a broadcast from the planet's surface. Wideband. It is using our own signal infrastructure. They are somehow transmitting on Velnakari military frequencies. Veyron turned slowly. That is not possible. And yet. Solveth's fingers moved over his console with increasing agitation. It is extending beyond Earth. Beyond this star system. It is being amplified by bodies in their outer planetary belt. Your radiance, the signal is reaching our fleet's inner channels. It is reaching the core worlds. Put it on screen, Veyron said, and his voice was very quiet. The holographic display shifted. And every officer on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion read what the humans had sent. To Emperor Kale Veyron and the Velnakari Empire. You told 47 civilizations they had no choice. They believed you. We don't. You have studied our wars. You read our history of conflict and you saw weakness. You missed what it meant. We have been at war with each other for 10,000 years. We know exactly how to fight. We know exactly how to hurt something bigger than us. We know exactly how long a species can endure when it decides it will not stop. We have had 48 hours to do nothing, so we spent them. Every weapons system is armed. Every civilian is sheltered. Every child has been told what we are fighting for. We are not asking you to leave. We are informing you. You wanted to show the universe what defiance costs. So did we. White heavy checkmark. This message will repeat every 60 seconds until you withdraw. Or until there is nothing left of one of us to broadcast. Admiral Ethan Cross. Earth Defense Coalition. On behalf of 8 billion humans who said no. Part 4, The Calculation. Solveth was running numbers before the message finished displaying. His implanted analytical core, a Velnakari enhancement given only to the highest advisors, processed defensive configurations, weapons signatures, trajectory models, and probability trees at a speed no biological mind could match. Then it stopped. Your radiance, Solveth said, and something in his tone made every officer turn. I am receiving the preliminary scan data from our forward probes. The humans did not spend 48 hours in fear. Veyron's 3 eyes moved to his advisor. Explain. They used our broadcast window as a countdown clock. Solveth's secondary hands were trembling, very slightly. Every nation on the planet redirected its industrial capacity. Power grids have been reconfigured as weapon systems. Their ocean floors, their oceans, appear to be lined with launch infrastructure we did not detect because our scans assumed it was civilian in nature. They hid military systems inside civilian architecture. For years. He paused. Our models suggest an engagement scenario with Earth would result in 30 to 60% fleet losses before the planet is neutralized. Potentially higher. They have been preparing for us specifically. They knew we were coming, Veyron said. They knew someone like us was coming. They have been preparing for first contact as a military event for decades. Another pause. Admiral Cross has 7 contingency plans active simultaneously. One of them involves their asteroid belt as a kinetic weapon delivery system aimed directly at this vessel. The bridge was silent. And the broadcast? Veyron asked. Received by 14 inhabited systems within Velnakari territory. Citizens are watching. Salveth met his emperor's gaze with the steady eyes of a being who had served long enough to speak truth even when it was unwelcome. The 47 are watching, Your Radiance. They are seeing what a civilization looks like when it refuses to calculate surrender. Emperor Kale Veyron stood motionless for a very long time. He had built an empire on the understanding that no species, when faced with the mathematics of annihilation, would choose to fight. It was not cruelty, it was arithmetic. You showed them the numbers. They saw the numbers. They yielded. The humans had looked at the same numbers. And then they had built more weapons. Part 5, the order he never expected to give. Open a channel to Admiral Cross, Veyron said finally. Salveth blinked. All 3 of his eyes blinked in sequence, the Velnakari equivalent of open astonishment. Your Radiance. You heard me. The channel opened. On the display, Admiral Ethan Cross appeared, seated, not standing. He was drinking from a ceramic mug. Behind him, Captain Joe Many stood at a console, monitoring something with the precise calm of someone who had wargamed this exact moment 100 times. Cross looked at the Emperor of 47 star systems and said nothing. He simply waited. You would truly fight, Veyron said. Not a question. We already are, Cross replied. Diplomatically, industrially, and psychologically. The kinetics start if you cross the lunar threshold. That's not a threat. It's a schedule. Another silence. Veyron looked at this human, this creature who wore his species' stubbornness like armor, and felt something he had not experienced in decades of absolute power. Uncertainty. What do you want? The Emperor asked. Cross set down his mug. To be left alone. Or, if that's not on the table, to negotiate as equals. Not as a resource. Not as a labor pool. As people. He leaned forward slightly. We watched what you did to the others. We spent 30 years getting ready so we'd never have to kneel. Veyron was quiet for a long moment. Then, almost imperceptibly, his posture shifted, a micro-adjustment that Salveth recognized immediately. The Emperor was recalculating. A species that spends 30 years preparing for an enemy it has not yet met, Veyron said slowly, is either paranoid or wise. We've been called both, Cross said. Epilogue, what the galaxy watched. The Velnakari fleet held position for 6 more hours. Then, one by one, the warships began to turn. Not in retreat, not entirely. In repositioning. A gesture that every political observer in 14 star systems understood immediately. The Emperor was not leaving. But he was no longer advancing. He was pausing. And in the grammar of imperial politics, a pause was extraordinary. The negotiations would last 3 years. They would be brutal, exhausting, and at several points nearly collapse entirely. Joe Many would spend 11 months aboard an imperial diplomatic station, arguing over the precise wording of 14 paragraphs. Cross would lose 12 pounds and gain 6 gray hairs and never once stop believing they would hold the line. They did. Earth would not become the 48th world to submit. It became something the Velnakari Empire had no existing category for, a partner. Reluctant, contested, imperfect, but standing. And in the archives of 14 worlds that had once watched their own surrender broadcasts, in the memory cores of species who had looked at the math and yielded, something circulated quietly for years afterward. A copy of that message. The one that had appeared on every screen. The one sent by 8 billion creatures who had been told they had no choice. In those archives, next to the message, someone had added a single line of annotation, author unknown, language of origin disputed. This is what it looks like when a species decides the math is wrong.